A great and lovely afternoon to you all. Welcome you to another exciting edition of Tosin and Friends. And guess what, folks? This time around, we have the opportunity to interview Femi Falana. Femi Falana is the founder of Falana and Falana's Chamber in Lagos. He is also a senior advocate of Nigeria and the father of Fowls, the bad guy. And I'm sure after this interview, he would help us get Fowls. Well, let's go straight into the interview. So this time around, I'm going to interview him based on the topic which is titled Better Approaches to Nigeria's Governance and Developmental Policies. This topic promises to touch on a wide range of issues that plagues the country. So let's go straight into the interview, and I'd like to say a good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah. About a month ago, the presidency came up with the idea of Ruga settlements. What really is your take on the proposed Ruga settlement plan by the federal government of Nigeria, which was meant to put an end to the farmers and herders crisis in Nigeria?
I don't think it's about a month ago. It's about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, 2 weeks ago.
Well, on a very serious note,
Yeah.
I want to believe very seriously that those who were behind the announcement set out ab initio to cause confusion in the country. In fact, I have described them elsewhere as fifth columnists in the government. Because there was no basis for it. It was meant to provoke. It was meant to incite. Because in 2017, this idea of cattle colony came up and it was rejected, even by the president, as well as the Mayor Allah. And at that time, it was agreed that what was important for the country was ranching. So the government opted for ranching. And ranching is what is set out very clearly in the National Livestock Program of the government.
Yeah.
So instead of saying that the program was being suspended, the president should actually have announced outright cancellation because the government has now gone back to the National Livestock Program, which essentially emphasizing the need for ranching by state governments. I believe that they will be aided by the federal government. Individuals and state government can establish ranches. And as I have said publicly, ranching is not a new phenomenon in Nigeria. We are ranching before independence and we have had ranches after independence. So there's nothing strange about it. So they talk about, we have always moved cattle from the north to the south is bonkun. It's not true. It's ahistorical. The Ahmadu Bello government had a ranch in Mokwa, now Niger State. The Awolowo regime had ranches in Akuninondo State and Okeako in Ekiti. While the Eastern Regional Government inherited the Obudu Cattle Ranch, built in 1951 by Britain. So there's nothing strange about ranches in our country. And for African countries that have resolved this problem, like Mozambique, like Kenya, like Ethiopia, and Botswana, these countries have embraced ranches.
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much for that response. Do you support the recent suspension of the Ruga settlement plan by the president, which just happened, I think, this week? Do you support it fully?
Which one?
The suspension of the Ruga settlement
No, I'm
plan.
saying that it should be cancelled.
Okay.
Can't suspend what is clearly, provocative. I mean, what is clearly meant to incite. There's no basis to suspend. The government, for me, has abandoned it and I decided to embrace ranching.
Okay. Yeah, so...
Which is the way to go.
Okay, yeah. So, to the third question. President Muhammadu Buhari has been in office for more than a month now without a cabinet. Now, some public affairs analysts are of the opinion that the action of the president is capable of getting the country into some economic mess. Sir, do you think the president is taking the right step as regards the proper steering of the country's economy at this present point in time?
No, you are mixing the appointment of ministers with the economic management of the country.
Yeah, I remembered when I was speaking with some public affairs analysts, they came out to say that one of the reasons the country slipped into the economic recession in 2015, I guess, was because the president has really not had a cabinet to work with.
That was a barren argument, very diversionary.
Okay, so
in the sense that even when the ministers eventually were eventually appointed, the recession the country went through has nothing to do with the appointment of ministers. And at the end of the day, the ministers appointed them, and those who are likely to be appointed now are going to be apostles of neoliberal policies, which cannot lift Nigerians out of poverty. In fact, the policies are likely to push more people to poverty. Because there's no country, no African country that can develop as long as any African country operates the neo-colonial peripheral capitalist system. It's not going to work. Because it's an ideology of poverty.
I see.
An ideology that will cause disenchantment for the youths. Because there are no job opportunities for them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So on the 21st of June this year, you came out to say that President Muhammadu Buhari is promoting illegality by allowing his 100 aides to remain in office despite the expiration of their tenure. Could you kindly give more insight to your statement?
Well, under the democratic system we operate, ministers and other political aides are appointed for a tenure of 4 years. 4-year tenure, at the end of which they are either reappointed or sacked. I'm sure you are aware that before May 29, the president dissolved the cabinet.
Yes.
And is here to reconstitute the cabinet or appoint a new set of ministers. He ought to have sacked all the political aides in like manner, because that is in line with the provision of the Constitution. If the president is going to reappoint them, and that was my argument, he's at liberty to do that. But just this evening, I've just got the information now that the chief of staff and the secretary of government have been reappointed. I do think that may also have applied, or that may apply to other, a political office holder. So one way or the other, I think the government is responding to the criticisms, which, are made in good faith.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So on the 20th of May 2019, you filed a suit before the Federal High Court in Abuja, seeking an order to stop the pre-trial media parade of criminal suspects by law enforcement agencies. Now, could you kindly explain how the parade of criminal suspects is null and void, according to the Nigerian Constitution?
Section 36 of the Constitution guarantees presumption of innocence in favor of suspect or accused persons. Anybody who is accused of a criminal offense is presumed guilty until the contrary is proved by the state. Now, when you arrest suspects and you decide to parade them, you are already giving the impression to the society that they are guilty and that the evidence against them is so strong that one way or the other, right, they are going to be convicted by the court. To worsen the parade of suspects, journalists are allowed to ask incriminating questions. And of course, these suspects who have been beaten and tortured would then make all kinds of statements. Now, for two reasons. I mean, one, that's prejudicial to their right to fair hearing. And sometimes the investigation has not been concluded. When the investigation is eventually concluded, it may be found that there is no evidence to charge with which to charge them or arraign them before any court. Now, you are not going to have another parade telling the public that we have found nothing against this suspect that we paraded.
I see.
Previously.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, it's a class war against the poor. You do not parade a governor or an MD of a bank or any big man or woman alleged to have stolen billions of naira. But those who are forced to armed robbery or kidnapping as a result of the looting of the treasury by members of the ruling class, whereby young people are not gainfully employed and they become disenchanted and frustrated to embrace criminality, are the people paraded. So, happily,
Yeah.
Section 2 of the Anti-Torture Act of 2017 has prohibited or even criminalized the parade of suspects. Since the police and other security agencies are not prepared to move with time and comply with the provisions of the law, we have gone to court.
Okay.
With a view to seeking an order permanently prohibiting the parade of suspects by security forces in Nigeria.
Okay. So, is that all you have to say on the issue now, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, you've spoken quite extensively. So, I would like you to provide a workable alternative that could end pre-trial media parade of criminal suspects.
No, once we filed the case,
Okay.
so far, I mean, we have served the processes. None of the agencies has filed a reply. I do hope they will eventually file a reply, but the law is already certain, the law is already clear. I do know that we already have about 4 or 5 judgments of Nigerian courts and the ECOWAS court to defend that parade of suspects is illegal. In addition to that, we now have the Anti-Torture Act of 2017 that has criminalized the parade of suspects. So I'm very confident that at the end of the day, the case we have filed will put an end to the parade of suspects in Nigeria.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for that response. So now, do you subscribe to the belief that the case of banditry in Zamfara is as a result of the criminal negligence of the former governor in person of Abdul'aziz Yari?
Yari?
Yeah.
The crisis in Zamfara State.
Yeah. Case of banditry, some public affairs analysts came out to say that the main reason why we have this issue in Zamfara State is because the governor systematically didn't allow the youths and the young ones get access to basic education.
No, beyond them, you have to appreciate that Zamfara State, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, fielded only 28 students.
Yeah, for WAEC, I guess.
For WAEC examinations. And that's a very sad development. And as I did point out at the material time, that country was putting fire in its roof. It's very sure about that. That the bubble will burst. And that's what has happened. And Zamfara is not alone. Go where you have banditry in the northwest, in Zamfara State, including Zamfara. You have insurgency in the northeast and in kidnapping in the north central, just like the southern part of the country. Once you run a system that does not take care of the majority of our people, a system that keeps people in the cocoon of poverty, almost on a permanent basis, you are likely to have violence, misdirected antagonism. And that's what is going on. You're not going to stop it. It's not a Zamfara problem.
Okay.
But to compound the problem is the failure of governors, all of them, to ensure that the Nigerian police force is managed by the Nigerian Police Council.
Okay.
And that body is made up of the president, the governors, inspector general of police, and the chairman of police council. The body never meets to organize, administer, and supervise the Nigerian police force as stipulated by the constitution. Furthermore, Zamfara State, like other states in the country, is under-policed.
And it has a...
And the few police personnel in that state are not equipped or trained to combat banditry. Where the governor has his own blame. I mean, I'm talking of Abdul'aziz Yari. Was his resort to irresponsible explanations. There was a time he blamed fornication for the crisis in that state.
Yeah, I remember.
But this has nothing to do with fornication.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with anybody offending the Almighty God. Because he said the people are engaged in fornication and they had offended the Almighty God. God did not unleash banditry on Zamfara State. The system unleashed banditry. The governor made the case worse by his absence in that state. He was permanently in Abuja or abroad. So he was not able to manage the security situation.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. So, I'm sure you are aware that Buhari recently just agreed to sign the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. I would like to have your take on that issue.
I think it's unfortunate.
Okay.
Very, very unfortunate that Nigeria is going to sign Nigeria hasn't signed, but Nigeria has indicated its wish or a wish to sign the agreement very belatedly. I say it's unfortunate because Nigeria is the leading African country in many respects. And so you will have expected Nigeria to take the lead in ensuring that colonial boundaries are demolished to promote trade and opportunities in the continent. And of course, we have the largest market in the continent. So we stand to gain more beneficially, more materially than other African states.
But the president was scared of foreign goods coming to overrun our locally produced goods.
From where? Foreign goods from where?
From other countries. And you know we have...
In how many of these countries are goods produced? In fact, apart from South Africa.
And Kenya.
Apart from South Africa, none of the other countries can really be said to engage in manufacturing. So Nigeria is still ahead of many of them.
Okay.
And we're going to put more goods into the market. And because out of a group of 5 Africans, 1 is a Nigerian. So we stand to gain more. Because the market is here.
Okay. So this will take me to...
Of course, if those goods come here, they are going to compete with our locally produced goods. And they will also force us to
but we don't have...
increase the quality.
But we have a huge infrastructural deficit in Nigeria. And that's one of the major concerns of the president.
No. The youth... What? You say we have?
We have a lot of infrastructural deficits in Nigeria.
Yes.
And that's one of the major concerns of the president. You know, power is one of our major problems.
No, that's not a problem.
Okay.
That's not a problem. Nigeria also has a right to insist, right? The fact that you are signing that agreement does not mean that you collapse your own laws and regulations completely.
Oh, okay.
You still have to decide which goods should come here. You still have to standardize the goods. This is where the Standard Organization of Nigeria, NAFDAC and others will have to come in. So that you don't turn our country into a dumping ground for all manners of goods.
Okay, So please, I would like to have your ratings on Buhari's first administration in terms of his anti-corruption fight.
The anti-corruption fight is actually a constitutional requirement. Every government in Nigeria is required to abolish corruption and corrupt practices. That is the mandatory provision of the Constitution, Section 15, subsection 5. So there is nothing extraordinary in a regime insisting to comply with the provisions of the Constitution. I would rather say that the Buhari administration has engaged in the recovery of public funds that have been stolen.
Okay. And is that
Whether it is fighting corruption is another matter entirely. Whether it is fighting corruption is another matter entirely. You cannot fight corruption if you engage in selective prosecution of criminal suspects. You cannot fight corruption if you prevent certain people from standing trial while others are made to stand trial.
Well, but some people will say Joshua Darie is in prison.
Just a couple of them. Darie and Jolly Yam.
Yeah.
Just a few people are in jail. Again, for me, there's a limit to which I blame the government.
What are the limits?
No, generally all over the world.
Okay.
Governments do not go out to fight corruption. It is the people, particularly the victims of corruption, that will stand up to fight corruption and then compel the government to remove corrupt people, to recover stolen money, and channel the money towards the development of a country. So I would blame Nigerians that have refused so far to own the fight against corruption and fight it even against the government of the day. But once you reduce the fight against corruption to the business of the FCC and the ICPC with all their limitations and shortcomings, you ain't going to win the war. And we must also be honest. The system we practice is a product of corruption. A neo-colonial peripheral capitalist system is essentially erected on the platform of corruption.
And you said something about capitalism. It's also...
There's no way every capitalist country is corrupt. While our own is worse, is the incompetence and the discipline of the ruling class here. In the West, in advanced capitalist countries, once you commit what Professor Akoyebode will refer to as the 11th commandment of the bourgeoisie, thou shalt not be caught. Once you are caught, the law deals with you. But in a neo-colony, like Nigeria, if you are caught by the system, by security agencies, including the police, you find your way out of the system. Right?
Yeah.
You try to confer immunity on yourself with corrupt practices, with connections. And so you are left alone. And so that is what we call official impunity. That's the difference. Capitalism is about corruption. Even the president of the United States, Mr. Donald Trump, said that he didn't pay appropriate taxes because he's clever. That's allowed in a capitalist system. Tax evasion, tax avoidance, as opposed to tax evasion, it's normal, it's legitimate. Capital flight, profit repatriation, it's allowed. Money laundering is allowed. Once you are clever. Selling of dollars, you reduce your central bank to a bureau de change. It's capitalism for you. The worst form of capitalism. So your government defends the dollar and not the naira. In certain eyebrow areas in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, and the rest of them, some houses are rented in dollars.
Yeah, I know.
You collect dollars as rent, which is clearly illegal under the Central Bank Act. School fees are paid in dollars in certain schools in Nigeria.
I'm sorry.
And so you destroy the currency.
Yeah, this is the last question actually. This reminds me, sometimes a few years back, you came out to say that Okonjo-Iweala got his salaries and allowances in dollars, while our colleagues received their pay in the country's local currency. Do you think this actually violates the constitutional provisions of our country?
Section 42 of the Constitution has prohibited discrimination on any ground in Nigeria. On that, in respect of that matter, apart from our condemnation of such discriminatory practice, the late Chief Gani Family went to court and even though he lost the case in the High Court, and the Federal High Court, he won the case at the Court of Appeal. And the two officers, the two ministers affected, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala and the late Olua Deniji, were ordered to refund.
And did they do that?
No, they filed an appeal to the Supreme Court. The government filed an appeal to the Supreme Court, which has not been decided. But
till now?
In that judgment, the court declared the payment illegal and unconstitutional, and that it should never happen in Nigeria again. And that indeed, as I did say, payment of dollar in Nigeria is illegal because the dollar is not a means of exchange.